So just before the break, Karen, we were talking about this amazing experience you had where here you are, a police officer, you're a novice police officer, but you're fully equipped, you're trained, and you're on perimeter. You arrest a bad guy that's reported to be armed and dangerous. You come back to the station and everybody's patting you on this back in this male-dominated police station. So I think during the break you asked, "What was I thinking?" So what were you thinking back then? How did you get from being a police officer and expanding into what you do now?
I think the whole part of it is I didn't think. I didn't think about it. I let go of the outcome and I just followed my heart. I went where I was drawn or where I felt pulled, and I followed my passion, and my passion was leading me to where I needed to be. And once I let go of the outcome, I just trusted. And that's had like a snowball effect in my entire life. There were a lot of bumps along the way. I mean, it was not an easy path, but I've never chosen easy. So I wasn't about to start, but it was so different than what I had been doing, but I loved it. I just couldn't get enough. And back then, this was the late 90s. There wasn't the resources we have now, and there was no social media, there was nothing back then. I just had to go into bookstores to try to figure out what was happening to me and how to sharpen my skills. I really had no clue what was happening. I knew something incredible was happening to me, and it fascinated me, so I just tried to practice as much as I could, understand as much as possible, read as many books as I could, and that led me to developing my animal communication abilities.
Well, you were on a spiritual path, obviously, right from when you were a child, because you came into the world with spiritual gifts and abilities like all uh, can I say the spiritual people in books from the Bible to the Quran to the Gita to all these books talk about spiritual experiences and always a life of challenge, difficulty, and service. So you were on the path, and you were alone as a child, and you were, of course, the dark forces were trying to get get you off the path of having a marvelous spiritual ability to communicate with animals. And I love this story about there you are on the job, and a deer says, "Over there behind the logs is where the bad guy is." You must have had other experiences along the way in your career as a police officer. But if you tell us a little more, I'm sure the audience would love to hear a couple more of these amazing stories. Not to brag you up, but I just think that's it, the amount of courage it took to do that. You know, the worst thing for a police officer going down a dark alley at night, knowing there's a bad guy at the other end of the alley and he's got a gun. And as an officer, you still have to go. Most people wouldn't go down there. They not me, call 911. So that's, to me, having that affinity with people who risk their lives like that for the public good. Obviously, in you, your spiritual wellness and capabilities were protecting you. But where I want to go with this is, if you might have had a few more of those experiences, but somewhere along the line, you made the transition from being an animal whisperer, I think is the term now put out there, horse whispers, dog whisperers, something like that. That was before those terms come out. Here you were having these communications telepathically or audibly or whatever. And tell us a little bit you didn't say much to the sheriff or the deputies, I'm sure, but they must say, "How did you know that?" And you say, "Well, see that little kitty cat over there? He told me that the bad guy was behind the curtain," or something like that. But how did you get through your career? How long were you a police officer, and how did you make the transition to being this amazing self-employed person, author, counselor, and lecturer?
My law enforcement career was not long. It was only about 3 years total. But when you work in a small department, you do everything. There's no divisions. There's no, you don't hand it off to someone else to take it. We had this saying, you catch them, you clean them. You had to take it all the way, through the end into court or whatever you were doing with that particular case. So it was a very condensed um, career. And I felt that I was being pulled toward animal communication. So once again, I followed that. I listened to that. And not to mention just that, but also I was getting older. I was already 36 when I entered the police academy. That's kind of, you know,
Uh,
pushing the envelope.
yeah,
So,
it's pretty hard running down
so
alleys and climbing over fences and stuff when you're like 40 years old or something. I think we can all
yeah,
relate to that.
I
So,
had about 25 pounds worth of gear on me,
oh gosh.
between the vest and all the other equipment that you have on the belt. And I was at 8,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. The suspects were getting younger, and I was, pushing 40. And I thought, I got to think about where my heart is and what do I want to do. If it weren't for law enforcement, I don't know that my abilities would have progressed as fast as they did. But I started following my true passion, which was the animals. And that was my decision to leave law enforcement and to go full time into animal communication. And this is all, I share all of these stories in my book. So
Which one?
it wasn't always easy during that time. There was a lot of pushback from loved ones. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit with you because
Else, which book were you referring to?
Hero Creatures and The Amazing Afterlife of Animals have this um, pathway that I took, and all the pushback I got,
Yeah.
especially from those the closest to me. They try to talk me out of it left and right. That, what are you doing? You're crazy enough to be a cop, and now you're going to go talk to dead animals. What the heck is the matter with you?
What about the pension and the holidays and the security? And you're saying,
Exactly.
this is my spiritual path. Like all spiritual masters, spiritual people, there comes that point, Karen, myself as well, where you just have this inner knowing that this is what you should do. And look at all the help you're doing now. I mean,
I know. I know. That's the silver lining of it. So I had to disregard everybody and
good for you.
basic, yeah, I had to just follow my heart. And it was very, very lonely journey. There were times when I felt like I was, just on my own, constantly sailing against the wind and hitting massive waves, but I just kept going. I don't know the drive or where that came from, but I just was on this course and I was going. And
Yeah.
no one was going to stop me. I don't care what they said. I've been called every name in the book. And, to go into the realm of intuitive work and energy work and animal communication, you deal with a lot of people that, first of all, they don't believe in it, or they think that you're just trying to scam them. And I come from the evidential background, being a police officer. So I became what I termed an evidential medium, meaning my goal was to get evidential messages that could only be validated and verified by my client so that I could literally prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I was definitely communicating with their loved one. So that was my goal. And my dream was to be the best that I could be in this evidential mediumship. Now it's a term, it's out there, but I was doing this so long ago that I didn't want to give general information like, oh, your dog or your cat loves you and they miss you and they had a good life.
You're too smart for that. I have a motto. Basically, I felt the same and come across it. My motto is faith is built upon belief, and belief is built upon evidence. And like you, when I was doing stuff for people back in the 70s, I would say go to the doctor and find out what I said was true or whatever look for the truth. Don't believe me, verify it. And that is a mark of you being in harmony with your high self. You were looking for the evidence so that in your mind, in your good heart, in your consciousness, there was no doubt. There was no like flowery, like making stuff. This was it. This is the facts. And you had the evidence again because of your background as a police officer, perhaps, or as also going back to your accounting days, well, being, let's find out those things. Your path was sort of guided from above. And I'm not trying to tell your story here. I'm suggesting that you and I and everybody else who's intuitive has had similar things. For the people who don't know, they're in the darkness. But that challenge that you met and you didn't stop, I compliment you again, because with the same courage, you persevered. The good book says a prophet is never honored in their own land, nor are they honored by their own family. And that's a test to be a prophet. So you're on the way of being a prophet,
Oh, just
big,
got goosebumps on that one.
yeah, well, that's me working. I'm being clairvoyant now. Or I'm being intuitive is a better, easier word to say it. So you've got this word. I love that term, evidential, what did you call it? Communication or reading. So what did you call it?
Evidential mediumship.
Mediumship. I would drop the mediumship because you're more clairvoyant. Okay. There's not somebody between you and the animals. They're coming.
No.
So that's more clairvoyant. That's a higher level of communication. If I might give you or offer that to you.
Oh, sure.
But you have these books and you have these experiences. So I'm sitting here in the audience listening to this wonderful, amazing interview on the Douglas James Cottrell channel. But also, I'm going to tell you, this is going to be broadcast on our podcast, The Wake Up, and also it'll be the audio part will be broadcast on our Global Village International Radio Show, plus Instagram and other things. So this is going to be heard several places. And everybody's sitting at this point, you're thinking, how do we get a hold of this woman? What can she do for me? Like, this is amazing stuff. So how can people get a hold of you? How can you do personal consultations, I guess, and you have your books and you have your podcast yourself. Tell us a little bit at this point. How can people get a hold of you right now?
Well, right now, the easiest way to get me is through my website, which is simply my name, KarenAnderson.net. And although I am no longer conducting private consultations, I retired from that several years ago to focus on coaching, animal communication, and writing. I have several hand-selected, very gifted animal communicators that I refer all of my clients to. So you can reach out to me for recommendations on a session. And I don't have a podcast, but it's so funny that you have mentioned that, because I've been kicking that around in my head for a while now. So I'm getting messages from above that maybe that's in the future.
Yeah. And
But
some people like me who live in the future all the time, every day, maybe just kind of like, seeing things for you out there as well. So people can go to Karen Anderson. Would you spell Anderson for people just to make sure? .net. Karen Anderson.
right, it's ANDERSON.net. And of course, all of my books are on Amazon worldwide. Two of them are on Audible. And The Pet I Can't Forget, which is my latest release, is I'm very proud of this book. It's a compilation of so many heartwarming and insightful stories. If you have recently lost a pet, or if you have an elderly pet that is maybe in its golden years, this book will help you understand how to find more signs, to receive more signs, raise your vibration, to be open to receiving signs, how signs are sent from the afterlife. It's all about signs, and that our loved ones never leave us. They're always with us, especially during our darkest times. And our pets love us more than anything. And that love has to be somewhere. It doesn't just end when the physical body ends. So that book, The Pet I Can't Forget, is all about these incredible and amazing stories. Plus, there are afterlife sessions that I conducted where you can actually hear some of the life-changing messages I received during actual afterlife communication.
How about you give us one of those stories right now, just to whet
Well,
everybody's appetite?
yes, and I do want to share one very powerful story for you. This is in my book, The Amazing Afterlife of Animals, and I just want to share it because it truly shows how much our animals love us, to the point of more so than they care about themselves at a certain degree. So I had all my sessions were done over the phone. We didn't have Zoom. back then. I was
Okay.
always on the phone. And my client had called in and she was very distraught because she had recently lost her beloved cat. Now, this cat she had found as a stray. It came into her life when she was really sad and lonely, and they became very, very close companions. It was kind of an outdoor indoor cat. And one day she was on her way to work. She was in a hurry. She was late for a meeting. So she backed out of the garage and she inadvertently
Oh
hit the cat. Now the cat survived. So, um,
my gosh.
however, later it succumbed to its injuries from that incident. So, of course, she was riddled with guilt and overwhelmed by grief and feeling responsible that she had killed her cat. And so she contacted me for an afterlife communication. So I opened up the session with the cat. I only used a photo. That was my
Witness or
connection.
contact. Yeah.
That's like having their cell phone number. I dial them up. I dial up their energy through their photo.
Okay.
And this cat
Well,
was,
we won't go there too much, but people are saying, "How'd you do that?" But anyway, let's keep going with the story. That's amazing.
it's a process. It's just kind of, I like seeing their faces. It lets me focus on them more. It lets me focus on their energy if I can see a picture of them. So the cat came through very upbeat and happy and balanced and beautiful and so much love for his mom. And I'm sharing all this information. I call you moms and dads, not owners, because if anyone owns anyone, they own our hearts. So I call you moms and dads.
I love it. That's great.
And we were sharing beautiful messages back and forth. But during the session, this cat kept showing me. Now, remember, all I had was the cat's name, age, and I knew that it had recently passed. I didn't know anything else. This
Okay.
cat kept showing me, and not to be graphic, but it kept showing me an amputated leg. It wasn't gross or, icky or anything like that. But, don't forget I was a cop. I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. So I kept seeing this amputated leg, but it was a human leg. And I thought, well, the cat must just be showing me that it got this
Wow.
injury. And I didn't want to say anything because she was already so upset. I didn't want to talk about the cat's injury. So I didn't tell her anything.
Whoops.
Two more
Whoops.
times, this cat flashed that image at me. Like, Karen,
Yeah.
I'm sending you this for a reason. So I have a rule, Douglas,
Three times.
three
Say it.
times.
Me too.
Okay. So I finally said very delicately, I said, I am so sorry. I don't mean to cause you any upset, but did your cat lose a leg? Was a leg amputated because of this accident? Total silence. And then she started sobbing. I mean, like, gasping, sobbing. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've really done it. I shouldn't have said anything. Why did I do that?
However,
When she could finally catch her breath, all she could say was, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I needed this. Thank you so much. And I thought, what? How would you want to hear that? She says, no, no. I said, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. She goes, no, 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 Karen. This is what I needed to hear. And I said, well, did your cat lose a limb? And she says, no. 3 months after the cat passed away,
he
she
lost a
was
leg.
in a horrible car accident and she had her leg amputated. And during the recovery phase in the hospital bed, she felt the cat laying next to her phantom leg.
Wow. Fantastic. I've had similar experiences, and I'm sorry I got ahead of you a little bit by saying, uh, three times, but I had a very similar experience, and this is all about you, not me. But I likewise saw a man who had no legs, and I was giving some information about this man, and I was saying, well, he's got no legs to stand on. Maybe he's feeling a little nervous. I was making stuff up. And the lady turned out to be quite intuitive herself, and she waved her finger at me. She says, Douglas, You're not telling me everything you see. This man has no legs. He was in a
Right.
train accident. And that was my lesson. And so you had this lesson, uh, and I've learned, I'll pass this on to you, Karen. It's because I like you so much. When I get in situations like that, I say, no, I'm going to tell you, I could be right, it could be wrong, but I'm going to tell you what I see.
Yep.
And I once had a businessman, and I said something to him, and I said, I have no idea what this means. And he says, I know exactly what that means.
Uh-huh.
Just like that. He says, thank you. And that was it. 15 minutes into the consultation, he had his answer and gone. So I'm passing that back on to you as being along that way of becoming a prophet, is that if you see strange things, and you will, in order to feel comfortable about it, you say, I could be right, it could be wrong. I teach this to students as well. And then I say, I have no idea what it means, but this is what I see. You made that lady's heart jump because she knew exactly that you were tuning into that animal, and everything you were saying was the gospel. I applaud you. And you did have, sooner or later, you kind of, after the third little nudge, you did say it. You didn't hold it, you didn't let it go back, or go by. How do you feel about that?
I still to this day get that same feeling that I got when I delivered that message, because I could feel her move from that deep place of darkness to where she was really understanding that her cat was there with her in spirit, and she wasn't alone, and he was there by her side during her recovery, and that it was more concerned about her than it was about what she had done to him. Because remember, the whole thing was she felt guilty for causing his death. That never came up. He never mentioned it. All he talked about was his concern for her. It's a beautiful story, and it's powerful, because the things that keep us up at night of things we could have done or should have done for our pets, or why didn't I take them in sooner, or why didn't I give them that medicine, or why didn't I take them to a specialist, or I waited too long, or didn't wait long enough. It's never an issue with our animals. Those are human thoughts. Those are not in our companions' minds. It doesn't serve them, so it doesn't even come up. They are so much better at this than we are, as far as what really matters. We stress about things that don't matter. And the animals bring us right back down to what's so important. And it sounds so cliche and corny, but it's the love that you shared with them. That's what's important. That's what they always come back to. And that's what matters. So you could have had something to do with their final moments unintentionally, and they don't ever see it that way. They don't judge us. Judging is a human trait, not an animal trait. They don't blame us. Blame is a human trait, not an animal trait. We don't have to ask their forgiveness. You ask an animal, what is forgiveness? And they'll kind of look at you like, I forgiveness. That's a human thing.
Now, now again, because you talk to the animals, you're telling us what they think or feel, or what their thoughts are. So it's not like intellectual conjecture here. You're telling us, the animals, this is what they say. Like, what are you talking about? Forgiveness. That was yesterday, wasn't it? Hey, what's in my bowl today? I'm sniffing the door. What's out there? I want to go out today. Never mind,
Yep.
it was pouring rain and snowing yesterday. It looks kind of neat. I would go out there today. So you're telling us this from the animal's perspective. So people should pay attention. Now, do they come back in other lives? I'm asking a rhetorical question. Do they come back? Do they reincarnate back in our lives from wherever, whenever?
Some do, some don't. And it's really hard to prove. And of course, me being evidential, I always look for the proof. So the proof comes through your heart and how you feel the connection with that animal returning. You'll know. There will be no doubt in your mind. You'll have a sense, a feeling, a download, or an impression. You will know when your companion comes back to you because it'll be an undeniable thing that only you can prove. I might be able to validate a few things like, they're showing me this, or they're saying that they used to do this, or whatever they want to tell me, but only you know what's in your heart and what you're feeling. And if that is the soul being recognized by your higher self, your souls will recognize each other, even if the exterior is different.
Makes sense. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.